They want justice. They want answers.
What stands out to you about his personality?
What's the family want most of all?
Closure. But you were just the last person to see her.
Get out
There's
of
an
my
arrest
yard
warrant.
and leave.
You have a lot of weighty accusations.
It was just after 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning, September 24th of 2016, when the call came in. A 6-year-old girl in Fullerton, California had dialed 911. Her voice was small, but the words were unmistakable. Her parents were dead. When officers arrived at the family's home on South Gilbert Street, they stepped into horror. One of the sergeants of the Fullerton Police Department said it was a grisly crime scene, and just to imagine 2 children having to wake up and expecting to see mom and dad and start their Saturday morning, like most kids do, to see what they saw would be difficult for anyone in law enforcement, let alone 2 children. It would be an image that would stay for the rest of their lives and shape the adults they would grow to become without mom and dad by their side. Inside, 3 adults lay dead from gunshot blasts. 39-year-old Jennifer Goodwill Yost was shot in the face as she slept in her bed. Her husband, 34-year-old Christopher Yost, tried to escape, but he was gunned down as he fled towards the back patio. And 28-year-old Arthur Billy Boucher, a family friend, was shot in the head on the living room couch where he had fallen asleep. The couple's 2 youngest daughters, just 6 and 9 years old, were unharmed but traumatized. One of them had been the one to pick up the phone and call police. Their older sister, 17-year-old Caitlin, was missing. What are the connections that led to bloodshed of this magnitude? Detectives immediately suspected this was no random break-in, saying, "We do not believe this was a random act of violence. We believe that the individuals who committed this crime specifically sought out this residence and the people inside. They were targeted, but why? Why did this married couple? Why them? What did they do? What enemies would they have had?" The suspects soon came into focus. 21-year-old Joshua Acosta, an Army mechanic stationed at Fort Irwin, and 25-year-old Frank Felix, known in his social circles as NT. Both men, like the Yosts, and their daughter Caitlin, were part of a furry fandom. Friends explained that Jennifer and Caitlin both attended furry events and that Felix and Acosta had once even helped run a fur meet at a park near Los Angeles. A fur meet, a gathering of the furries. To many outsiders, the detail about furries was an oddity, and to many of us, about this subculture. But for those who knew the family, the issue wasn't the fandom. It was Felix, who was 25 years old. A family friend recalled that Jennifer had banned Felix from the house only weeks before the murders, saying, "I remember Jen telling me a couple of weeks ago that she told Caitlin that she wasn't allowed to hang out with Felix, and she also told him he wasn't allowed to hang out with Caitlin because he was a, quote, unhealthy person. And she was only 17. He was 25. The reason the friend explained was troubling. It is a parent thing, she said. Felix just made some poor decisions around the daughter. He did something in front of their daughter. It was some gesture of self-harm, and it upset her very badly because nobody wants to see their friend do that. She told her mom, and her mom told the dad and the mom said, "We don't want you hanging around our kid anymore." A few things to unpack here. First of all, nobody wants a 25-year-old hanging out with their kid, a 17-year-old. And nobody really clarified what the self-harm gesture was all about. Was it, a gesture of attempting to want to kill himself? She said self-harm. I mean, what does that mean? Either way, it points to somebody who's deeply troubled and has self-destructive tendencies. So, yeah, you wouldn't want that person coming around your kid. Nobody would. And on the other side, as a 25-year-old, why would you want to hang around with a 17-year-old? They emphasized that the Yosts were not rejecting the furry subculture, but protecting their child. The source continued to say, if it did have something to do with being a furry, I think they would have forbidden their daughter from that lifestyle, which they didn't. It had to do with having good social boundaries and being able to choose your friends wisely. And not a 25-year-old. The same friend admitted shock when they learned of the killings. I knew the accused, and I would never in a million years thought they were capable of murder, said the friend. They didn't seem like they would be able to do something like that. They didn't seem like bad people at all. A little disturbed, maybe, but honestly, in this day and age, who isn't? That was the quote from one of the friends. Jennifer, known as Jen Ma in the furry circles, was remembered as a beacon of kindness. One of her friends said, I met her at a meet about a year ago, but she was always bringing a smile to people's faces, and everyone that she talked to, she would light up a room. She was just such a sweet woman and always there to help. She was always so kind to everyone and would talk to anyone and everyone. She was almost like a second mother to me, says this longtime friend of hers. Others describe Jennifer as a creative spirit. Her childhood friend said she was always into art, design, and all kinds of stuff. She just even made her own necklaces. She was crafty. Jennifer even ran a small online store called Vixie's Creations, selling crystals, pillows, and stuffed animals. Now, the day before her murder, she had posted on Facebook about making stuffed lasagna noodles with Italian hot sausage, literally like any other day, as if life was resuming as normal, no drama, no haunting threats, nothing looming to their knowledge. Her friend said her love for Chris, her husband, was obvious to those who knew her. Before Chris, saying, I never saw her settling down and being happy in just one relationship, and then she fell really hard for Chris. She was madly in love with him. Chris, affectionately nicknamed Bubba by his friends, was remembered as a family man who loved tinkering with cars and playing the drums. His cousin reflected on the loss in a quote saying, it is kind of surreal. There was a lot of hate in this act, and we can't understand why. Chris never hated anyone. It is just a lot of pain going on right now, rightly so. The family established a GoFundMe to help raise money for the 2 young daughters left behind. We need to raise money to help support these girls, family told People magazine. It is not just right now, but it's also a lifetime of help that they're really going to need to process everything that they've been through and that they saw. This is trauma for life. In talking more about the kind of guy Chris was, the husband, one of the neighbors said something that really stuck with me. Neighbor and a friend recalled how generous the Yosts had been to her throughout life. She said that Chris put my son's bunk bed together. They helped me unpack. And she replied, how can I repay you? Thank you so much. And he said, this is what we do. We help people return the goodness back to the world. That is what they said. They were good people. Bocher, the youngest victim, was remembered by his uncle Salvador as a good kid who worked at Mountain High and at Taco Bell. It also sounded like he was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, digging into the plot, the why, as investigators pieced together the events leading up to the killings, they uncovered chilling evidence of premeditation. On September 19th of 2016, just 5 days before the murders, Frank Felix sent a Facebook message to another furry friend, saying, I might be assisting someone in murder, he wrote. Alarmed, the friend pressed for details, and Felix quickly backtracked, claiming he was only talking about killing an animal. Investigators would later treat it as a red flag, a warning that no one had been able to act. In the days that followed, Felix and Acosta, they prepared. They drove to Burbank to buy bolt cutters, earplugs, and shotgun ammunition. Felix supplied his father's shotgun. Acosta agreed to be the triggerman. Prosecutors later revealed that the two exchanged emails laying out contingencies. If someone answered the door, the plan said that person would either be pushed aside or shot. Each day, the plan grew less theatrical. The weapons were real. The shopping trips, well, they were real. And the obsession was even more real. Day of the murders, in the early hours of September 24th, Caitlin left the house to meet Felix. She waited with him in the truck outside. Acosta went in alone with a shotgun. Arthur was the first to die, shot in the head as he slept. Jennifer was shot between the eyes in her head in her bed. Christopher woke up, tried to flee, and was shot in the head as he ran towards the patio. By morning, the children discovered what had happened, and one of them dialed 911. Felix was arrested in Sun Valley on September 25th, and Acosta was taken into custody the same day at Fort Irwin. Both were charged with 3 counts of murder with special circumstances for multiple victims, and Caitlin, she was not charged. It was not a random act, said the sergeant. These suspects specifically sought out this house and these victims. Now, Acosta's trial began first in October of 2018. Jurors heard testimony that he described the Yost family as a festering wound that he had cauterized. On November 8th, the jury convicted him on 3 counts of first-degree murder with special circumstances. He was sentenced in December to life without parole, plus 75 years to life. Felix's case took a bit longer. In November of 2024, a jury convicted him of orchestrating the murders. In April of 2025, he was sentenced to 3 consecutive life terms without parole. First of all, they left a trail of evidence, so they weren't the sharpest tools in the shed. I mean, you have 2 guys that are emailing about a murder to kill. They're DMing each other on Facebook. They're emailing each other. They're literally leaving breadcrumbs for detectives to easily piece together. And then you have the 17-year-old teenager who seemingly was along for the ride. But here's what happened to 17-year-old Caitlin. There's more to the story. The district attorney, Todd Spitzer, underscored the devastation. He said 2 little girls, 6 and 9, went to sleep not knowing it would be the last time that they would see their parents alive. They woke up to find them shot to death. The trauma inflicted on those little girls, compounded by the loss, both of their parents in such a violent way, is beyond heartbreaking. So violence is never the answer. And a sick and twisted plan turned into life behind bars for 2 young men. So what's the role of Caitlin, the 17-year-old teen girl? Did she know about this? During the trial, the defense argued that Acosta had acted to protect the 17-year-old from her stepdad. Acosta said that he is autistic and that the teen had manipulated him into killing her parents. Caitlin Goodwill Yost testified under immunity that her stepfather had sexually assaulted her from ages 7 to 15. She also acknowledged that she had previously lied to police and prosecutors about who carried out the alleged abuse and who she had told about it. Now, we can't confirm this because he's now dead. The potential motive was reported by the Orange County Register. Now, the jurisdiction where the trial was held, that was in Orange County. So Acosta then, who was serving on active duty, he met the family through local furry gatherings, at costume play events, and the teen told jurors that she was planning to tell her mother about the abuse taking place over the years that night, the night of the murders, and that she had asked Acosta and a friend, Felix, to help her run away afterwards, after she confronted them. She let Acosta into the home that night. She then waited with Felix in the truck outside the house as Acosta murdered her parents. Acosta testified that the teen knew nothing about the murder plot. And Caitlin also testified she didn't know anything about it. She had no idea they were planning to kill her parents, her mom and her stepdad. So these allegations led to the teen's immunity and the killer admitting they never told her about the plan, knowing the outcome. I can only imagine what she's living through each day, thinking, I'm going to run away from home. I'm almost 18 years old. I'm going to leave, especially if the abuse claims were true. One day would be too much to bear in a house such as that. It seemed like she was close to her mom. It was just a difficult topic for anyone to bring up to their parent. She asked 2 trusted young adults to help her get away, to escape. And in return, they planned this diabolical secret killing instead. If Acosta was the gunman, he was younger. He says he's autistic and easily manipulated, that Felix was the planner, and he was also older. He talked Acosta into being the gunman. With his family-owned gun, nonetheless, with Felix's family-owned gun. If he was seen the teen, as been reported, why did he manipulate Acosta to be the shooter? Because he was younger and easily persuaded. Felix seemed to be the conductor of the murderous plot. In the aftermath of this triple homicide, that's now left 3 girls without their parents in a shock pulsating throughout a community. The furry community recoiled from these headlines. It's this unique subculture. So the organizers canceled local meets, worried about harassment. The prominent furry writer called Patch O'Fur wrote this in an article. I think it really is the worst thing that ever happened with ties to this furry community. This is a niche interest, so when something like this happens, it's a personal tragedy to us beyond just a news story to others. For friends and family of the victims, the aftermath was quieter. It was heavy. Jennifer's necklaces went unfinished. Chris's drums fell silent, and 2 little girls had to grow up without their parents, and a teen lost. And the broader story became a warning, not about fandoms or costumes or niche interests like furry community, but about obsession, boundaries ignored, and the terrible consequences when 2 young men convinced themselves that murder was a solution. This is a bizarre case, not so much because of the niche subculture of this furry community or the lifestyle. That doesn't make anyone a killer, but more so it's the social influences, which any parent knows it's strong and can be scary. Teen years are rough, and it's when influence is strong and social pressures are strong, and the teen's environment can be pulled by older adults. It's when a parent can lose control from outside influences far greater than how they were raised. So we hope the 3 daughters in this story are healing and finding happiness despite this terrible tragedy that they survived. And before I let you go, I want to give you an important update to a breaking story from just 2 months ago. There's been a major development. A new update on the shocking case of a New York model and fitness trainer who told police he found his husband dead on the toilet, even as a troubling history of abuse quickly started to surface. Do you remember this couple making all the headlines? It was just a few months ago. So now the Manhattan District Attorney just announced the indictment of 40-year-old Donald Zeibenhood, charged with a string of serious offenses, including burglary, assault, criminal contempt, and weapons possession after 3 escalating incidents of domestic abuse earlier this year. This story is so sad. The indictment comes even as the official cause of death for Zeibenhood's husband, Jacob, 34-year-old fitness trainer, remains under investigation. The cause of death is still unknown, and police say they discovered Jacob in the bathroom of the couple's Harlem apartment in the early hours of August 1st, slumped over with deep wounds to his head and legs and blood scattered throughout the home. So why burglary and weapons charges first and not murder? Legal experts will explain that prosecutors often move ahead with charges they can prove immediately, like violating a protection order, and he had many of them, many ROs against him. Breaking into an apartment or carrying a weapon to keep a perceived dangerous suspect in custody. Murder requires a much higher evidentiary threshold, including a confirmed cause of death at times helps as well. So filing too early could risk undermining the entire case. So that means the charges announced are not the end of the story. If medical examiners conclude Jacob's wounds caused his death, for now, prosecutors say their focus is on securing justice for Jacob's repeated pleas for protection, pointing to a very disturbing pattern of violence in the months leading up to his death. There were 3 domestic reports just this year. February 25th, police say Zeibenhood assaulted his husband Jacob in their Harlem apartment in violation of a full order of protection issued in November of 2024. Jacob Zibin called 911 and the police eventually arrested Zibin. Another order of protection was issued ordering him to stay away from Jacob, his home, and Jacob's place of employment. Next, on June 14th, Zibin went back to Jacob's apartment and threatened to kill him with a knife in violation of the full order of protection already issued. So when police responded, Zibin refused to open the door of the apartment. He was barricading himself in, and then they eventually entered the apartment and arrested him. He should have done jail time at that point, but he did not. Another order of protection was issued. So then last, on July 31st, Jacob told his father over the phone that Zibin was assaulting him, and he texted his father photos of the evidence, small cuts to his face and his head. Now that evening at around 8 p.m., Jacob Zibin sent his father a photo evidence of this abuse and this assault taking place. He was covered in blood. He had a large wound on his head and at the back of his leg, which had a large bleeding gash. Now, the victim additionally told his family over the phone that Zibin had attacked, beat, and sliced him. Hours later, he was found dead. So I'll keep following this story, but it sounds like the system really failed him. He had multiple complaints wanting a restraining order, protective orders, which he received, but he never did jail time, and that's a problem.